Hello everybody and welcome to this Visual Studio Code full tutorial for beginners. In this video, I'm going to be aiming to show you all of the important functionality in VS Code that you need to know to get up and running as fast as possible and be as efficient as you possibly can. This tutorial is designed for people that have never seen VS Code before. However, if you have seen VS Code and you don't know all of the functionality in it, this is probably useful to watch. And if you're looking for any specific features or functionality, look in the description. I will have some timestamps that state all of the stuff that I will be covering in this video. So with that said, let's dive in after a quick word from our sponsor. Before we get started, I need to thank the sponsor of this video, which is AlgoExpert. AlgoExpert is the best platform to use when preparing for your software engineering coding interviews, as the highest quality coding interview practice questions. With over 115 practice questions, detailed solutions in 9 of the most popular programming languages, a feature-packed browser-based coding environment, extensive test suites, and conceptual overviews and code walkthroughs for each and every problem, AlgoExpert is the best resource to use to ace your coding interviews. AlgoExpert also has a data structures crash course, coding interview assessments, and a brand new mock interviews feature. I can highly recommend AlgoExpert as a former customer myself and now an official instructor on the platform. Get started using AlgoExpert today by hitting the link in the description and using the code TechWithTim for a discount on the platform. So before we actually go through the Visual Studio Code application, I wanted to quickly give you an introduction to what it is. So VS Code, or Visual Studio Code, oftentimes people will refer to it as VS Code, is a free, open source, lightweight code editor that works for almost every programming language. Now, VS Code is the most popular code editor, at least in 2021 when I'm filming this video, and it is maintained and developed by Microsoft. Now, the reason that people like it so much is because it's extremely versatile, it's extensible, so you can actually make your own extensions for VS Code, and you can really make your VS Code environment specific to your development needs. So with that said, let's get into the VS Code environment. I'll actually open the application, and if you have not yet downloaded it, I will leave a link in the description so you can download and set up VS Code. So I'm now here inside of Visual Studio Code. When you first open VS Code, you may see a screen that looks something like this. It should most likely open this welcome screen. You don't have to have this welcome screen open. You can close it by pressing this button, but this just provides some shortcuts, for example, to open a folder, clone a repository, create a new file, or review some of your recent projects. So I'm going to start by closing this, and I will show you the first important aspect of VS Code, which is this Explorer tab. So you can see that there is some tabs right here. These are very frequently used tabs. You're probably going to use all of these when you're actually developing or writing code in VS Code. And this Explorer tab is kind of like your Windows or File Explorer. This Explorer tab allows you to view all of the files that are in your project, to create new files, to create new directories, to modify or manage files, move them around, and do everything that you would probably be able to do in a regular Windows Explorer like this, or in your Finder if you're on Mac, or whatever the Explorer is for Ubuntu. So with that said, let's get started by creating a new VS Code project. I will also show you how to open an existing project. So to do this, we are going to go to File, and we're going to press Open Folder. Now you'll notice that there's something called a workspace here. So in VS Code, we have kind of two distinguishing things that you can open, a folder or a workspace. Now a workspace is just a folder that has VS Code settings that are specific to that workspace. So for example, it may have some test scripts that are set up such that there's shortcuts to run them. It may have a different font. It may have a different size for the editor. You can customize settings for a workspace. You also have settings that are global, and I will show you the global settings in a few minutes. Anyways, for us, we don't need to worry about a workspace. In fact, almost all of the time, you're not going to use a workspace. You can press Open Folder. So here in Open Folder, if you have a folder that you would like to open, so you have some project, you can just open that folder, or you can create a new folder, and then that will kind of create a new project. So here, I'll make a new folder. I'll call this VS Code Quick Start, and I'll spell start correctly. And then we will open this folder, and that will be our new project. So now when I open this folder, VS Code will refresh, and we can see that this folder is now open in our editor, or in our Explorer, sorry. So from here, we can start by creating some new files or some new folders. So let's actually make a folder. I'll make a folder here and just call this test. And then inside of this folder, I'll create a few files. I'll say test.py, that's a Python script. And then I will say test.html, that of course is an HTML script. Notice we get some fancy icons popping up here before the file, telling us that VS Code does actually know what these files are, and it recognizes the file extensions. Now, if you are not seeing these icons, don't worry, I will show you how to make them appear in 1 minute. So that is the basics of opening projects, opening files and folders. From here, you can right click on files and do anything that you normally would be able to do. You can copy them, you can paste them, you can move them around. For example, if I want to move this file outside of this test folder, I can just drag it out. And now it will ask me if I want to move this. I say yes, and now you can see it is outside of this interior directory. Now, right above this tab here where it says VS Code Quick Start, you can see I have my Open Editors tab, and this will just show you all of the files that you currently have open. So like in most IDEs, you can have multiple files open here. Notice that when I double click on them, they will stay open in the editor here, and I can drag them around and move them as I please. Everything in VS Code is very intuitive, and you can resize everything as you would intuitively think to be able to do. So now that we understand the File Explorer, how to open projects, and how to create a new project, I will show you the VS Code Terminal, which in my opinion is one of the most useful and just nice to have features in VS Code. So to open the VS Code Terminal, you can type the following command, Control and then backtick. Now backtick is on the same key as the tilde, which is kind of that squiggly line that no one knows what it's called. It is to the left of the 1 key and below the escape key, but there's also an easier way to open up the terminal. You can simply drag from the bottom of your screen and move it up. Now this terminal is just like any default terminal that you would use. So if you're on Windows, this is going to be PowerShell or your standard command prompt. If you're on Mac, you're on Linux, this will probably be your bash or whatever the default terminal is for your system. And inside of here, you can type any commands that you would normally type. Now by default, this terminal will start in the directory of the project that you opened. If you're using a specific Python interpreter, like I am right here, it will automatically activate that interpreter for you. You don't have to worry about this if you're not someone who works in Python or understands Anaconda. This is just something that by default will happen when you have your Python interpreter set up in a specific way. Now, the nice thing about this is that you can create multiple terminal instances. You can kill terminals. You can split them so you can view multiple terminals. And you can also look at things like an SQL console, a debug console, an output window, and any problems that may occur. So for example, if you're working in, say, a Java file or a TypeScript file and there was some typing issues, all of those would pop up right here. You would be able to press on those problems, and then it would bring you to where those problems actually existed in your project. Anyways, let's focus on the terminal. The first thing I'm going to do here is show you this window right here. So this window where it says Conda will allow you to actually view and configure all of the terminals you currently have open. So I'm going to create a new terminal by pressing this plus button. And notice that it now shows me I'm in the PowerShell terminal. So I'm going to go back to my Conda terminal, and I'm going to kill this terminal by pressing this trash button right here. Now it will bring me to my only active terminal, which is PowerShell. Inside of here, of course, I could type any command that I want. So I could cd into something, I could ls, I could clear, so cls, and any other thing that you would normally do, you can do in the terminal. Now I will create another terminal here. So I have now 2 PowerShell terminals. One of them is saying Conda, you don't have to worry about that. And if I want to view both of these terminals at the same time, I can now split this terminal. So when I split this terminal, notice that I have Conda-Conda. So I now have this terminal, but 2 times. So I could type 2 separate things and view them. I believe I could split this again, and now I would have 3 terminals. And now I can close this, close another one, and close that one by pressing the trash icon. Anyways, what I'll do now is just close this so I can drag this downwards. And I will now show you the extensions pane, the debug pane, the GitHub pane, and the search pane. Now, first of all, whenever I work in VS Code, I like to work in full screen mode. So to get into full screen mode in Visual Studio Code, you can press F11. Now, if you're on Mac, I believe this is going to be function F11. It may be a different key, but on Windows at least, if you press F11, this will toggle full screen mode. So anyways, I'm going to stay out of full screen mode just so we have access to all of the file menus up here. And I'm now going to show you the extensions pane. So when I press on extensions or I press Control, Shift, and then X, it will show me all of the extensions I have installed and recommended extensions for my development environment. So VS Code is great because by default, it comes very bare bones. There's pretty much nothing installed by default. And whenever you start working in different languages or using specific frameworks or scripts, you're usually going to be prompted to install an extension for those. For example, you can see here I have 23 installed extensions, and extensions are just extra functionality for whatever it is that you're doing. So if I scroll down, you can see I have the Python extension. Notice this has 31 million downloads. That is the one I worked on when I was at Microsoft. I also have this remote WSL extension and a bunch of other ones as well. So extensions are super simple to manage. You can just press on installed extensions to disable them, to uninstall them, to install them, and to search for an extension, you can just search for it in here. So for example, one of the extensions I usually recommend people install is called Prettier. Now, Prettier is a code formatter, and I will show you how it works shortly. You don't have to install this, but it is just an example of an extension you may want to install. Now, if you were working in Java, or you're working in Python or JavaScript or TypeScript, you would install those extensions and then you get support for those languages. So that is why VS Code is loved by many, because it doesn't come with all this stuff you don't need. You just install what it is that you do need. So anyways, that is the extensions tab. Again, go here whenever you're looking for some specific functionality. And there's a lot of useful extensions. If you would like a video on my top extensions, then leave a like and a comment in the comment section down below, and then I will potentially make a video on that. Anyways, now that we have looked at this extensions tab, I want to show you this search tab. So one of the most common things you're going to be doing when you're writing code is you're going to be searching for variable definitions. You're going to be trying to find and replace things. And well, being able to search for specific lines or search for specific text is very useful. So let me now open up a bit of a larger project that already exists, and I will show you how we can use this search functionality. So I've opened a web development project that I actually did for an entire YouTube tutorial series. This was the full stack web application with React and Django. And inside of here, you can see I have a ton of different files. I have some Python ones, I have some JavaScript ones, whatever. I have a bunch of different things. So firstly, I will show you how you can actually zoom in and zoom out of VS Code, because notice my text is quite large, and you probably don't want it this large when you're actually writing code and not making YouTube tutorials. So to do this, you can press Control, then minus and plus on your keyboard as you normally would, and this will shrink and zoom in and resize this VS Code window. Now, I just want you to note that this is zooming. So we are simply scaling the VS Code window. We are not actually changing the size of the font here, which I will show you how to do in a minute when we get to the settings section. Anyways, I wanted to show you the search tab, so let's zoom in one more time. And here, what we can do is just search for text. So if I wanted to search for, say, room join, which is some text that exists in my program, you can see it will show me all of the files that have the text room join. All I have to do is press on these and it will bring me to where that text is defined. Now, if I want to replace some specific text, what I can do is type the text that I want to replace. So I could just say room join, and then maybe I wanted to replace that with join, and it will show me what this replacement will actually be. And I can now press this button right here to replace all. Now there's a few more settings here like match case, match whole word, and regular expression, but I won't get into those in this video. So that is the search tab. There is not much more to talk about with that. And now I'm just going to show you a few kind of editing tricks or a few things that you can do in the editor itself. So one of the most common things, or one of the most useful things that you can actually do in VS Code, is you can find the definition of variables or of classes. So for example, I have, I'm trying to find some variable here that this is going to be good for. I have this variable here called room code. So if I highlight this, first of all, you can see it's highlighting all of the other room codes. But what I could do here is right click on this and click go to definition, go to type definition, go to implementations, go to references, peek, and a ton of other useful things. So I won't really show you all of these because there's a lot of different ways to look at this. But I just wanted you to be aware that you can do things like this. And specifically, if you're working in a typed language, it's very useful to look at, say, all of the references of a variable or look at where it was defined. Now, this isn't going to work very well in JavaScript, but if you're working in TypeScript or Java or C++ or something, this would be a lot more useful. Anyways, if you want to do some basic stuff, like you want to find text in a file, so you don't want to use this search tab here because this finds it in all of the files in your directory or in your project, you can press Control F. It will bring up this right here, which will allow you to just search for things in this file. So of course you can press enter and it will bring you down to the different matches that it finds. Now, if you want to actually replace text, you can press Control H. Now this will open up this replace tab right here. You can also just press this little arrow and now you can find and replace. You can replace one at a time, or you can replace all of the matches. All right, so that is finding and replacing. Now I will show you a few other interesting tricks that are very useful. For example, you can see we have all of these windows open here. Sometimes you'll notice when I open a file, so let's actually just open info.js, you see that this file is italicized. When the name of the file is italicized, that means that this is going to close when you open another file. So if I open homepage.js, notice that my info.js is going to close. If you want this to stay open, you can double click on it. Notice it will not go italicized now, and then it will stay open. It also will stay open if you make any changes to the file itself. Anyways, once we have all of these files, a lot of times you want to view files side by side or up and down vertically. To do that, you can right click on the file and you can split this up, down, left, or right. So if I split left, now I can see multiple files and I can resize the windows just by moving them around like this. I can also split again. So I could split this up and now you can see we have all of these files open. And you can play around with that yourself. Pretty straightforward and easy to figure out how that works. I also can just drag this file around to wherever I want. So I could drag it on here. I also could drag it up here, and then it will automatically respond to that action. All right, so now let's quickly go through the settings page of VS Code. There's not a lot of settings that you need to modify. In fact, by default, you probably don't really need to change anything in VS Code, but it is useful to know what some of these settings are. So when I press on this settings button right here, notice we see a few things popping up: the command palette, the settings menu, which you can access from Control plus comma, extensions, keyboard shortcuts, user snippets, color theme, and a bunch of other things. So actually, let's change the color theme first. This is probably the first thing you're going to want to do. We'll go color theme, and you can see I'm using Monoki, or however you say that. I probably mispronounced that, but we could change this to say Solarized Dark. Let's change this to something else now. Let's go with light default, which I think looks horrible. Let's change this now back to the one that I liked. Okay, so this is my favorite one by far, but everyone has their own preference. And then I will show you a very useful thing here. So if you press on the settings button and you open the command palette, this is something that you're going to use all of the time in VS Code. So a lot of the extensions that you install will have some commands that come with them. Now, to open the command palette, you of course can press settings and then you can open it manually, or you can press Control, Shift, and P on your keyboard. So this opens up the command palette, and inside of here, you can type a ton of different commands. So for example, if I type Python, you can see all of the commands that are prefaced by Python. Now, of course, I can't really go through all these commands because this depends on the extensions that you're using. But if you're looking for a specific command, say like copy, just type it in the command palette and see if it pops up. And chances are you'll find something that you're looking for. Another useful one is format document. So if you have a formatter installed, you can press format document with, and then you can pick the formatter that you want to use. In this case, you can see only Python is the one that I have. So I press Python, and then we'll automatically format this document for me. All right, so that's the basics of the command palette. The next thing I'm going to show you is the file explorer. So yes, there is this explorer here, but if you want to search for a file name, what you can do is press Control P. This will now bring up the search file by name window. I don't really know the name of this. And what you can do is just search for files. So I can search for, say, util.py. It will show up here. I can press that to open that file. Very useful. Saves you a lot of time. Now, there's a ton of keyboard shortcuts in Visual Studio Code. To find them, you can go to the settings menu. And in fact, let's do that. So let's now go to settings. So Control plus comma. And this is where we can change all of the settings for VS Code. So you can see we have our font size. This is an important one. We can also search for all of our settings up here, and there's a ton of other things that we can change. So I'll let you guys mess around with this on your own. There's not too much for me to go through here, but the first thing you're probably going to want to change is font size if you're like me and you like your font to be nice and large. All right, so that is the settings page in VS Code. Now I will show you the debug window, and I will show you the GitHub window. So let me actually open up a new project to illustrate this, and I will be right back. All right, so I've opened a new project, and now I will show you how to run a file. I will show you this GitHub window and then this run and debug window. So first of all, if you want to run a file, this of course depends on the type of file that you're using, but for Python files, for example, there is this run button at the top of the screen. So if I were to type in some code here, let's say print hello and then world, then what I can do is save this file, Control S, and then run. Now, when I run, notice it's going to open up a terminal, and then I will see my output down here. So that's as easy as it is to run your code. But again, this depends on the type of file that you're using, and this is going to be different depending on what stack you have. Anyways, what I will show you now is this GitHub window. So for this GitHub window, what I need to do is initialize a GitHub repository. But if I was already in a GitHub repository, then you would see what we're about to see. So what I'm going to do is initialize a repository. All this is really going to do for us is run the command git init. That creates a new GitHub repository. And now notice inside of this, we have our source control window, which is showing me all of the changes that I've made. I can add these changes to the staging area by pressing this plus button. And I can also remove them from the staging area by pressing the minus button. I also can revert all of the changes. Sorry, that's open file, but here I believe I can revert all of the changes by pressing discard changes. And then once I have the files in the staging area that I want to make a commit for, I can type in my commit message. So say something like first commit, and then I can press the check mark, which will actually commit all of these changes. So now you can see the little 2 goes away, saying that, hey, we have no files in the staging area. Now from here, I can do a bunch of other things. I can toggle the view mode, which allows me to actually see all of the changes that I've made to my files in my code editor. I also can refresh my GitHub repository, and I can press these 3 dots to do things like pull, push, change branches, and all of the other standard GitHub commands you would normally want to use. So there is a nice interface for GitHub in VS Code. All right, so now that we understand GitHub, and of course there's a lot more to go through, but I won't cover it all here, let's talk about this run and debug window. So this run and debug window allows you to run and debug files. So notice that when I'm on an HTML file here, it's not really giving me any meaningful output because I can't really run and debug my HTML file. But for my Python file here, I can press run and debug, and then it will ask me how I want to debug this. So you can choose your method. I'm just going to go with Python file, and then it will bring up this little debugger window and it will run the code. Now, I didn't place any breakpoints, so we didn't really get any meaningful debug output, and I'm not going to be going through debugging in depth. I have an entire video on how to debug, but the basics are you can press breakpoints by going in the gutter here. So this is called the gutter, and if I highlight over this, it should say place breakpoint. Anyways, you can see these little red dots are different breakpoints in your program. And then at the bottom here, you can see that we have this breakpoint window, which is showing us where the breakpoints are. Anyways, if I run and debug my file with a breakpoint, so let's go ahead and do that. As soon as I hit that breakpoint, my program is going to stop. I can see all of the variables on the left-hand side of my screen. I can type in expressions to watch from right here. I also can play, I can step forward, I can step into, and I can step out of. I can also restart, stop, and of course, play and pause. So that is kind of the basics of the debug window. Again, I don't want to go into depth in any of this stuff, just showing you what exists. Now, there's a few other windows here, for example, Remote Explorer and SQL Tools. I'm not going to talk about those in this video. And in fact, I think that covered pretty much everything that I wanted to show you. So last thing that I will mention is that there is a ton more stuff in VS Code. For example, you can modify the appearance, going in full screen mode, going in something called Zen mode, which removes all of the gutters and all of the side menus. I believe to get out of this, you just press F11. It removes you from full screen mode. There's a few other interesting things like your editor layout, which you can change. And yeah, just a ton of stuff in VS Code. It's super useful, super versatile. And also keep in mind, there's this little kind of bottom menu here that shows you some useful information. So anyways, that is all I wanted to cover. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another YouTube video.